drive, having nightmares again, and this time I need someone to believe me. I am 28 now. No one believes 15 and 16-year-olds after all, overdramatic. Attention-seeking. Leftover childhood over imagination. Mental illness? Have we taken her to a doctor? Yes. He said it's just the teenage hormones. Ah. That's it. This time I need someone to believe me. I was born in Fitzroy, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia in 1992. My brother was born in the same place in 1997. In 2001, before the towers in New York City fell, my family moved to the US. A few months later, the towers fell. No more house. So we moved to Texas. For almost 7 years we could not buy a house, we had to rent. One night, in one of the rental homes, my brother woke me, horrified. There are red eyes in the corner of my room. No, there is not. You are having a nightmare, leave me alone. I don't remember him leaving, but the morning came and he was no longer in my room. I started to notice he would not travel to certain parts of the rental house and I just ignored him. For years. He never mentioned the red eyes in the corner of his room again. We moved around a lot after that and finally, we were able to buy our own home. 704 Longford Drive. It was an older home for the area. Early 1980s. The surrounding homes were 2000s range and actually had vinyl flooring instead of old scratched-up flooring that was light, ugly brown that looked like something out of the 1970s. I used to study every scratch and scrap on the floor and would wonder, what happened there? Movers? Children? Dogs? Or something else? Regardless of the home's obvious, bland and aged interior, it was at least our home. It was an early cookie-cutter house though. You could tell. Every main room was on the first floor and the second floor was a dominated media room with slanted ceilings for the roof and a huge walk-in attic. The attic was practically its own room, which I suppose my parents liked at the time due to their endless 80s furniture from Australia that for some reason, they refused to part with. The most disgusting of all this furniture was a couch with fishes on it. A navy and yellow couch with very detailed fish on it that were a variety of colors. I don't recall when they finally got rid of it, but I'm glad they did. I'm glad they got rid of a lot of things when we left that house. It took a few years. About 5 to be exact, to truly realize something wasn't right. And it all started the night before sophomore year of high school. My best friend Chelsea and I had practically grown up in that town. We had heard all the legends, laughed about them with our friends and boyfriends. But I guess that night we got brave. So we went to the local graveyard that was at least 200 years old and decided to wander around it and take pictures on an old digital camera. New camera at that point in time. My friend Chelsea had claimed in the past that she could see spirits. To this day I'm still not sure if I believe in that shit. Even after what happened. Logic is a bitch. I'm laughing about something. Stumbling through the graveyard, like a disrespectful, shit teenager. We have all been there, right? Remember when you knew about death, but still didn't process that it could happen to you? Sometimes I'm still like that. Tell me. Does it disappear with age? Chelsea stops laughing. I look back at her because the silence stuns me. She is white. She's a white, Jewish girl, but she was unnaturally white at this moment. Her brown eyes look black and they are big. We need to leave. What? She speaks, angry. We need to leave. Now. I feel something almost consume me. Just absolute dread and fear, beyond fear, all in me. There is no fight or flight. It is like it's broken. We just stare at each other, like we are going to let whatever is about to happen, happen. Like we won't go home tonight and we accept it. Chelsea breaks. I watch her, throwing up her feet as her figure gets further from me and more towards my little red Mustang on the horizon. I don't know how. I don't remember to be honest, but I ended up following her somehow and suddenly was grabbing the door handle of my Mustang. Then I was inside, the feeling had at least faded. What did you see? Nothing. But I felt let's go. I don't want to talk about it. Where is the camera? I handed her the camera and she flipped through the pictures I had taken. They were unusually blurry and as she scrolled, I saw more and more bubble-looking things. Dust. That's what I immediately thought. I knew nothing back then, I suppose. She stared intensely at some specific ones, then a look of rage came onto her face. She began deleting every picture, furiously, and in that moment, I thought only one thing: drama queen. I dropped Chelsea at home. She said very little. I told her I would see her tomorrow at school. She turned and said, "Make sure you remove the SD card from the camera before you get home. Make sure all the photos are deleted." I ignored her and rolled my eyes after she had shut the door and turned away. I went home, laid out my first day of school clothes and slept better than I had slept in a long time. I think I slept better back then, honestly. Now I'm a serious insomniac with overactive REM cycles. My brother's room was right next to mine at Longford. We slept with our doors open. I'm not sure why. I think it was a childhood habit that I never would participate in today. I don't think he does either. I woke at 6:15 that morning to his panicked face wailing over me. To this day, I have never in my life seen him so frightened. He was screaming and my memory tells me, crying, wailing. "Someone came into your room." "What?" "Someone is in your room. Get up." He dragged me out of bed and ran to the door, still clinging to me. I was more awake now and threw on the light. I saw nothing, except my tacky lilac room. He ran to the closet and flung the door open. Nothing, but my gross mid-2000s clothes. He ran to the bathroom, threw the door open, threw the shower curtain back. Nothing. I looked at him, eyebrows raised and almost laughing at him. His face turned paler. I woke up and there was a light in the hallway and I saw a man. He was older, had a long beard, overalls, and he was floating. He walked into your room. I saw it. It was not a dream. Do not look at me like that. I saw him. He began to tear up from frustration. My parents had noticed the sound at this point and came in. He told them what happened. The first exchange between these adults: "He is on AD medication, he's been having nightmares on this one, we should probably switch him." Yes, but what if you saw Jesus? My mother had noticed his face before stating this. It was a face of disbelief, frustration, anger and horror. "I'm sorry, brother. I didn't believe you either." My mind had already begun to favor the adult side of things. Too scared to admit there is sometimes things we don't understand. Too arrogant and egotistical. "I'm sorry." He moved out of that room soon after. He moved into the guest bedroom and the guest bedroom furniture moved into his old room. I was now alone on that side of the house, which I enjoyed for a time. I rearranged my bedroom furniture, as I wanted to participate in a change as well. One night, not long after, I woke from the sound of footsteps in the hall. It was a small hall that only led to the now guest bedroom and my room. I figured it was my dad checking on me. My older brother had pasted away when I was a baby and my father never truly recovered. He would often come check on us while we slept. He always just wanted to make sure we were still breathing, I guess. We were 3 of 4 children left. My older sister was married and lived far away, so we were always the babies that were left. Step, step, step. It was familiar, so I rolled over and got more comfortable, preparing to fall back asleep. Step, step, step. I finally opened my eyes and checked out my door to look into the hallway. Nothing. Only the dim night light was staring back at me. Okay. He's walking around the kitchen for his late-night glass of milk. I leaned to the right to peer past the hallway. The kitchen light was off. Step, step, step. I was half awake and confused. I closed my eyes and listened hard. Where the fuck is that coming from? My eyes burst open as I realized. I slowly followed my lilac wall to my ceiling, which was unpainted. I froze and stared in disbelief. It was coming from the attic. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I felt something was so wrong and I had to stay awake in case it decided it wanted to consume me. Something was there with me. A week later my parents complained about squirrels in the attic and I suddenly was sleeping very well again. Then, I heard it again. Even after the exterminator said the holes were patched and the squirrels were gone. The next day I went to the attic to figure this shit out for myself. I opened the attic door and walked up the stairs. I studied where my room would be under this attic and I found it. I walked over as far as I could go and suddenly saw nothing but insulation was covering the entirety of where my room would be. That night was the first time I ever slept with my door closed and it has not changed since. Step, 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 step. Sometimes the footsteps sounded rushed, sometimes angry, sometimes sad, but they wouldn't come every night. Chelsea stopped sleeping over. I complained to my parents about the squirrel noises every now and then, but the exterminator never found anything. No traces of anything. Rats, bugs, squirrels, nothing. My parents didn't believe me and my brother would almost ignore me when I mentioned it. He didn't want to hear it. Months went by and finally I was able to convince Chelsea to come over for a minute and watch some TV. As she entered the house, we were gossiping about someone from school. We laughed in the hallway and then it happened again. She stopped and this time she fixed her eyes on the stairs leading to the media room. The stairs were zigzag stairs, so the stairs would go up, then it would be a flat landing, then the stairs would go the opposite direction and then there would be the media room. On the wall after the first set of stairs was a painting my mother had painted of a thunderstorm. Chelsea parted her lips and said in a whisper, "There is someone standing at the top of your stairs. I can see them in the painting's reflection." She left. I told my father that I suspected someone was up in the media room. He searched everywhere up there. Nothing. I told him that Chelsea must have seen some shadows then. Another few months went by and I stopped going up to the media room. I used to secretly watch Family Guy up there when my parents were gone at work, but something was just wrong. It felt wrong being up there. Halloween came around and my brother and I were instructed to pull everything out of the attic. My brother ditched me halfway through and I was pissed. I angrily started grabbing the boxes and was verbally venting to myself about his lazy nature. I started down the steps of the attic and slowly started to lose my grip on one of the boxes. I paused to adjust, still livid. Then, PPPPPPSSSSSSSSSS. A shot of air was blown from behind my head, right next to my ear. I watched as a few strands of hairs reacted to the shot of air and flew out in front of my face on my left side. Like someone had intentionally snuck up behind me and blew air at the back of my ear in an attempt to scare me. Except, I was the only person here. I was venting about it after all. I knew where my brother was. He was downstairs playing Call of Duty with his stupid friends. Dad was in his room watching Judge Judy. His favorite, and Mum was on a 3-day trip. She was a flight attendant. She was in Seattle, 6 states away. I watched my hair fall back to the side of my face. I dropped the boxes and let out a scream I don't think I have yet to top. 12 years later and I have never screamed like that again. I jumped and leaped down the remainder of the stairs and fell out of the attic door into the media room. My brother was already halfway up the stairs thinking something horrible had happened. I trembled out. What happened? Someone blew in my ear. My hair, I saw it. It flew past my head. It. A smile cracked on his face and he started laughing at me. Payback. For when I laughed at him the first time. Except, this time, he was the one in denial and disbelief. He was like me. He didn't want to believe it. Life was already too scary and overwhelming. Why believe that? My dad followed and I immediately started lying to his horrified face. I tripped. "Oh, are you okay?" "Yes." "Okay, finish getting the Halloween stuff out." "Yes, sir." I turned to my brother and threatened to hurt him if he didn't finish helping me. He didn't. I waited for my mother to get home and explained I wanted to do it with her and I would help her set up the Halloween stuff. She was delighted. The next few years I developed a habit of sleep aids. Nothing major, just over-the-counter stuff. To this day I take about 3 sleep aid pills a night. My husband doesn't understand how my body has built up that kind of tolerance and he doesn't believe it either. If only he knew. The footsteps never stopped. Till the day we moved out, they never stopped. I finally started doing research into the house. Turns out it was owned by an older couple before us and the husband hung himself. In the attic. Above my room. Financial problems apparently. I told my parents. They didn't believe me. I never told my brother. I figured he wouldn't want to know. I still wonder if his nightmares ever stopped. Mine didn't, but they have just gotten more complex with age. Taxes. Career. Break-ins. Car wrecks. Plane crashes. Ghosts of the past. Name it. We moved about a year later. I came home from university one day, in our new home. My mother's dream home. She asked me to go back to Longford Drive. Our old mail was apparently over there. I drove up to the house, a shiver went down my spine. It started at my left ear. I had lived in a normal home for a few months now and hadn't realized how wrong Longford had felt. Something was really wrong with it. Did I let it in? With the pictures that night at the cemetery? Had it always been there and I just hadn't noticed until my brother had his episode that morning? I don't know. I don't want to know, still. Sometimes, things are so frightening or traumatizing that you feel like you don't need to know. You don't want to face it. The world is scary enough. I walked to the front door of Longford Drive, one last time and rang the doorbell. An older woman answered the door. I smiled and told her I was here for the mail. She jumped and went, "Oh yes. Here." She handed me a bundle of letters, magazines and what I assumed was mostly junk mail. As an adult now, I can confirm that is what it mostly was. I told her thank you and started to turn away. She stopped me. "Did you used to live in this house?" "Yes, ma'am. For many years." "Can I ask you a question?" "Yes." "Did you ever have problems with critters getting into the attic?" "We had someone come and check, but they said there was no sign of anything up there. It almost sounds like footsteps at night. My granddaughter comes to stay and keeps complaining that it sounds like footsteps in the attic. Any of this sounds familiar?" "No." She wouldn't have believed me anyway, but this time, I need someone to believe me.